All right. Tonight's Alumni Roundtable is a second quarter with Carolina Scholar Alumni Brad Williams, and I'm going to give him the mic.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you so much. Everybody can hear me? Cool. Well, as Jan said, I'm Brad Williams. I graduated from the Honors College in 2011. I am a former Carolina Scholar. My wife, Jenny, graduated in 2013. She was a broadcast journalism student. She was a McNair Scholar. So we're both big Honors College people and great supporters of the university, and just so happy to have this opportunity to be connected with the Honors College and with you all as students. And the presentation today should take just under 30 minutes for me to get through, but feel free to stop me along the way if there's anything that I say that doesn't make quite sense, or take notes, and I'll certainly be around afterwards to answer any questions related to the presentation, or if you'd like to ask questions about my experience at the Honors College or afterwards, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right. Here we go. Okay. So what I do for a living, I am a financial planner. Our firm is called Highlands Wealth Group, and we're located in Greer, South Carolina. I'm originally from the upstate. I grew up in Spartanburg, and so managed to make it back to the upstate about 7 years ago now, and love every second of it. And we're in Columbia a lot. But as y'all know, today we're going to talk about the basics of retirement planning. And so the information that I'm going to share with you today should help you to be able to make educated choices about saving for retirement. Depending on where you guys are in your college process, just in the next few years, you're going to be getting jobs, and there will be decisions that you have to make regarding retirement plans. And I'm going to tell you the differences between those things so that you'll at least have some ability to know what you're talking about and know what you're doing, because very few employers actually help with sorry, I think that I'm just checking right now, since I was made the host, I'm just making sure that I'm not responsible for letting anybody in or anything like that. Sorry about that, guys.
Got it. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, let me move this because I think that's in your way. Cool. All right, let's go. All right, y'all, in this presentation, we're first going to address why saving for retirement matters. And after that, I'm going to share 2 retirement savings mantras that I believe everyone should live by. And then we'll work through 5 key steps to reaching an ideal retirement. And to wrap up, I'll show you how to estimate the amount you'll actually need to have saved when you retire. So the big question is, why should you save? As a financial professional, I've been asked more than once, why should I even save for retirement? When I get Social Security income, people often underestimate what Social Security will actually pay for. On average, Social Security currently replaces only 40% of the income you were earning before retirement. Now, that's an average. For higher income folks, that percentage would likely be even lower. Do any of you think that the average American could continue to live the lifestyle that they're accustomed to on 40% of the income that they're earning right now? Chances are probably not great that they could. So hence the need to save for retirement. For many people, retirement planning can seem complicated. There are different savings vehicles to choose from, as well as investment options to understand and consider. And on top of that, you can't forget to account for what will happen with inflation, Social Security benefits, how long you might live, and how much healthcare could cost during retirement. There's also lifestyle decisions to factor in, like where you plan to live when you retire, or if you're considering working a part-time job for a part or all of your retirement. It's a lot to think about, and especially if you don't know where or how to start. So the good news here is that successful retirement planning can be attributed to living by 2 simple mantras. Let's start saving early and save as much as you can. And I'm going to show you how these mantras can help alleviate the fear factor in retirement planning and empower you to take basic actions that will help set you up for your ideal life in retirement. So to start, let's look at 2 ways that living by these mantras can help you right off the bat. Number 1, starting to save early And saving as much as you can will boost your confidence. If you Google retirement savings in America or listen to financial news reports about retirement planning, you might become convinced that there's actually a retirement savings crisis in this country. The majority of articles and reports out there suggest that people are not saving nearly enough for retirement. I want to show you these statistics from the Employee Benefit Research Institute and Greenwald as Associates. As you can see, only 23% of the people surveyed said that they feel very confident they will have enough money to live comfortably throughout retirement. And only 21% felt that they're doing a good job preparing to retire. About a third are either not too confident or not at all confident. And the largest group falls in that somewhat confident category. And I don't know about you guys, but in my mind, feeling somewhat confident isn't really confidence at all. For any of you who've already started saving for retirement, I hope you fall in that very confident category. But if you don't, then it might be time to explore what you can do to boost your confidence. The second way living by the 2 retirement planning mantras will help is to allow you to focus on your ideal life. I'm not just talking about your ideal life in retirement. I'm talking about your ideal life right now, meaning knowing that you have a plan in place and knowing that you're doing the things that you need to do to get to that ideal life in retirement is going to free you up to confidently be able to do the things that you want to do, knowing that your long-term goals are secured. But when it comes to retirement specifically, let me ask you this question. Would you rather work longer, meaning not retiring as early as you might like just for the sake of maintaining your lifestyle? Or would you rather retire earlier, but be forced to lower your standard of living just to be able to make it work? It might be a tough question to answer, but I like to introduce option number 3. Who here would rather retire when you want and continue to enjoy your current lifestyle? Starting early and saving as much as you can will allow you to focus on your ideal life today and in retirement while making option 3 far more achievable. So let's get specific. Now we're going to discuss 5 practical steps you can take to put these 2 mantras to work on your journey to reach your ideal life in retirement.
Brad, I'm going to have you pause for a quick second, and we check to see if we've got anybody needing to get in real quick.
Let me take a look and see if I can.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You're on such a good roll.
No, it's okay. Are you able to see that? Because I don't see. It looks like Brett? I found it. Looks like Brett's out.
Right.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting to be the host.
I know. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right.
I think that's everybody.
Thanks.
All right, y'all.
Thanks, Brad.
So the first step to reach an ideal life in retirement is to choose your savings vehicle. Settle in, because we're going to spend some time on this one. I'm going to tell you about the different options you'll have and the difference. This is probably the most important part of the presentation today. The other 4 steps go by a lot faster than this one will. So to get started, one of the most common retirement savings vehicles is the employer-sponsored retirement plan, like a 401k or 403b. Some of you may be participating in one. Some of you may have heard of that. There's also the individual retirement account, or you might have heard of the term IRA. There's 2 types of those, traditional and Roth, and I'm going to explain what this all means. So let's first talk about the employer-sponsored retirement plan. I'm going to use the 401k as an example. So a 401k is a retirement account offered by employers to their employees. The employees contribute money to their accounts on a pre-tax basis. That means your contributions reduce your gross income or your overall income number, and that money is not taxed when you earn it. That's going to be important later. We'll get into some more details about that. Your employer can choose to match a percentage of the contributions you make to this plan. Examples of a possible match might be something like, we'll match up to 6% of your annual pay, or it could be 100% of the first 1% of your pay and then 50% of the next 5%. There's a lot of different ways companies can do this, and they're not required to provide a match. But if they do, I highly encourage you to take advantage of it, and I'll show you why a little later. These contributions are deposited into various investments, which is typically a lineup of mutual funds selected by your employer. The employee has the freedom to choose from that limited menu of investment options to develop an allocation that matches their time horizon, which is the number of years you have from now until retiring, and risk tolerance, which is the individual's attitude towards investing, which can be more conservative or more aggressive. The earnings inside this account grow tax deferred, which can allow the investments to grow in value and compound tax free. That means no tax on any interest or dividends, which is income earned by the investments, and no tax on capital gains, which is how much it has grown over time. I'm quickly going to discuss the term tax deferred in a little more detail. Remember, the income you contribute to a 401k is not taxed at the time you earn it. That doesn't mean you will never owe taxes. All you've done is deferred payment to some point in the future. So tax deferred just means taxed later. The hope here is that you'd be taxed at a lower percentage in the future than the one you're subject to currently. So when you retire and you start taking withdrawals, those withdrawals would be taxed at your normal tax rate. So remember, you're taxed later, which is when you take withdrawals from this account, likely for your income during retirement. So adding the amount withdrawn from retirement accounts to the income you earned in that same year would determine your gross income number for tax reporting purposes. So every dollar taken out of a 401k in retirement is treated just as if it's a dollar you earned in a job from a tax standpoint. Under the current tax law, you actually have to wait until the year you turn 59 and 1/2 years old to start taking withdrawals, or you could be subject to a penalty. So that's why they give you the ability to get these tax advantages, because you can't touch it for quite a long time. So currently, if you do take early withdrawals prior to age 59 and 1/2, that penalty is an additional 10% tax on the amount that's taken out. Got just a few more comments to make on the employer-sponsored retirement plan. So when you get jobs, many employers now offer what's called a Roth option for their 401k plan. And unlike the 401k that what's called a traditional 401k, like we discussed on the previous slide, contributions to a Roth 401k are funded with after-tax money, which means the income is taxed at the time that you earn it. And the big difference here is that money can grow and grow, and all qualified withdrawals that you take in retirement are tax-free. You already paid taxes on these contributions, so you won't owe additional taxes when you start taking money out in retirement. The penalty for withdrawals prior to age 59 and 1/2 also applies here. So why would you do this? If you think that your tax bracket may be higher when you retire than it is now, the Roth option may be something you want to consider. And conversely, if you think the tax bracket might be lower, then doing the traditional 401k may be more beneficial. You also, in a lot of cases, have the option to do a split contribution between both types of 401k plans. This is a complicated subject and is a great conversation to have with a financial planner, or if you have somebody helping you prepare your taxes, to discuss each year which type of contributions you would make based on what your expectations of income are now and in retirement. So lastly, there are actually limits on how much you can contribute to an employer-sponsored retirement plan in a given year. In 2022, a participant can contribute up to $20,500 to a traditional or Roth 401k, or split that between the two. So it can't be $2,500 to the traditional and an additional $2,500 to the Roth. It's a total amount that can be either or split between the two. In 2021, that amount was actually $19,500. So it can increase every year, and it likely will over time, but the IRS doesn't guarantee an increase every year. Also, for anyone who's age 50 or older, there's a provision for a catch-up contribution where you can add an additional $6,500 as of 2022. All right, so now we're going to talk. Oh, so there's a question?
Yeah, I had a question about I've looked at the Roth and the employee savings retirement plans. My question was just regarding, so whenever you're considering obviously how much to put in things, do you have a recommendation on how much is split between, you might get to this later, but employee versus your own traditional Roth versus whatever or you might get to that later, but yeah.
Yeah, and I will talk a little bit about that later, but we can be a little more specific right now. It's a good question. And as many things in financial management are concerned, the answer is it depends. And that means it depends on really what your income situation is. And I'll talk a little bit later about some limitations there are to making contributions to specifically IRAs, but it really comes down to a standpoint of whether you do traditional or Roth, and that's going to apply to IRAs, as you'll see in just a moment, really is determined by expectations of income long-term based on your career, which is researchable, which is something you can talk about with a financial professional, and what other sources of income you might have in retirement. Because again, it's what matters most is what you think is going to happen to tax rates. Most likely the percentages will go up, but it's really a matter of how much income are you going to need to live on in retirement, and will that subject you to a higher tax rate than you're subject to now, or a lower one. And that could change throughout your career, which means you could make changes each year to the elections you make to your employer-sponsored retirement plan as to whether it's going into the traditional side or the Roth side. And as far as what percentages are concerned, I'm going to show you some benchmarks later in the presentation that are a good starting point for people at different phases of their career as far as what percentage of their income they should contribute. So I will show you that in just a little bit.
I have a second really quick question.
Yeah.
With the Roth, with both of them, do you get taxed on gains? I know that you have with the Roth, you pay beforehand, but you still get
that's a good
taxed on
question.
gains.
So part of that tax deferral attribute of both of these plans is that any income, so interest or dividends that's earned by the investments inside of this account, and any gains that this account achieves over time are not taxed. So it's only the withdrawals. So from the traditional side, the withdrawals are taxed as ordinary income. From the Roth side, every distribution that comes out of a Roth 401k is 100% tax-free to the account owner. So you don't pay capital gains tax on the growth from these accounts. That's the beauty of tax deferral. And that's one of the reasons why, if you have high income expectations in retirement, taking advantage of making as much of a contribution to a Roth option is a really good idea, because tax-free income in retirement is good for everybody. And some of this will get answered more in these next slides, because we'll talk now about the individual retirement account, or an IRA. So an IRA is a tax-deferred retirement savings vehicle that has to be established by an individual person. So you have to do this yourself. No employer is going to open this for you. IRAs are actually held by custodians, like a bank or a brokerage firm. At Highlands Wealth Group, we use an organization called LPL Financial as custodian for our clients' IRAs. Some of you might have heard of Vanguard or Fidelity or Charles Schwab. All of those organizations are custodians, and you can open individual retirement accounts with them. Most of the time, any banking organization that would have some sort of option for you to do this as well. So unlike the employer-sponsored retirement plan, which has a limited menu of investment options, the IRA actually gives the owner access to a much broader array of investment choices. They can own a lot. They can own different types of assets like stocks, individual stocks, or bonds, mutual funds, exchange traded funds. Some of those words might not mean anything to you all, but ultimately the point is you have a lot more ability to access different types of investments based on what is most appropriate for you in this type of account. It's important to know that in order to contribute to an IRA, you have to have what's called earned income. That means income from a job. So if you have any other investments that pay you dividends, or you, for instance, in the future own rental properties that pay you rental income, that's passive income and does not count as earned income, and would not make you eligible to make any kind of contributions to an IRA. Like a 401k, contributions to traditional IRAs are generally tax deductible. We'll talk about the exception to that on the next slide. Earnings actually grow tax-free, and you pay tax on withdrawals in retirement, just like the traditional 401k. And withdrawals would be taxed at your normal tax rate, just like it was income you earned from a job. The 59.5 early withdrawal penalty also applies to IRAs. So everything we're talking about has that same feature. You can also choose with IRAs to open a Roth IRA instead of a traditional. And again, when you hear Roth, all that means is contributions are made with after-tax dollars. So you don't deduct that when you contribute to a Roth IRA, and any withdrawals you make in the future are tax-free. And the same thing applies regarding tax deferral. You would not pay any taxes on any income earned inside this account or any gains. So the difference between what it's worth now and what you paid for it, if that's more, typically that'd be taxed as a capital gain, but you're not subject to that in this type of account. So it can grow and grow and grow as much as it has the ability to grow based on the investments inside of it without you having to be concerned about paying any taxes on that growth. In 2022, the annual contribution limit is lower for IRAs than it is for 401ks. You can see it's $6,000, and there's an additional $1,000 option for people that are 50 plus. So this might be a complex detail, but it's important to know that your ability to deduct contributions to a traditional IRA may be limited by your income. So this might get back to a little bit on the questions asked earlier. All or a portion of your contributions may be rendered non-deductible, meaning you don't get any kind of tax advantage up front based on what's called income phase-out limits. And those limits are subject to a number derived from your tax return called modified adjusted gross income, which is basically taking what's called adjusted gross income, which can actually be found on line 11 of your 1040 form. So anybody who wants to look at a tax return, go look at line 11 on the 1040. And you can add back certain deductions and credits, which will determine your modified adjusted gross income. That's a complex subject, but I'm just going to show you an example real quick. So in 2022, you can see that a couple that's married filing jointly would be subject to these phase outs if their MAGI reached 109,000. So between 109 and 129, the amount that they could deduct from their contribution would be limited. But if they got to an income over 129,000, you can still make a contribution to a traditional IRA. You just can't deduct it. And the point here is if anyone in any point in your careers in the future are ever making the decision to make a non-deductible contribution to a traditional IRA, please discuss that strategy with a financial professional, whether that be a planner like me or a tax professional, to discuss the merits of doing that for your specific situation. The same thing that we're talking about here as far as your ability to make contributions to an IRA does apply to the Roths. You're also subject to different phase out limits, but it's different. With a Roth IRA, the limits are higher. As you can see, for married filing jointly between 204 and 214,000. Above 214,000, you're no longer to directly make a contribution to a Roth IRA at all. So that's something to think about. And again, if you're ever in that situation in your career where you're unable to make a Roth contribution, talk about options with a financial professional about ways that you can do other strategies to create tax-free income for yourself in retirement. All right, guys, everything we just talked about was a lot. Like I said before, the remaining steps are a lot easier to digest. Any questions right now before we move on to the next 4 steps? Cool. And we're recording all this, so you guys will have the ability to go back and refer to different things. So, like I said, the remaining steps are much easier to digest. So let's take a look at step 2, which is to start early. That's one of our retirement mantras. So I don't think anybody's surprised that that's one of the steps. I want to show you a simple way to understand how important it is to start saving early. It's called the rule of 72. This is an easy way to calculate how long it will take for your money to double if it's invested. All you do is you take the number 72 and divide it by the rate of return you hope to earn on your investments over time. And that calculation gives you the approximate number of years it will take for your investments to double. Your investment strategy, whatever that is, could help you determine what your expected rate of return might be. And the earlier you start saving, the more periods you will have for your money to double. So I'm going to walk you through a quick example. Imagine you're 29 years old, you've been working for a while now, and you've saved $100,000 for retirement. Let's say you plan to retire at the age of 65 and your long-term expected rate of return based on your investment portfolio is 8%. Using the rule of 72, you know it should take about 9 years for your money to double. So if you didn't save another dime for retirement at age 29, 9 years from now at age 38, your savings could grow to $200,000. 9 years later at 47, it could have doubled again to 400. And then 9 years later at 56, your 400 has become 800,000. And then when you retire at 65, you could have $1.6 million saved. Imagine what it would be if you had continued to contribute part of your income towards the retirement savings. This example, again, is just showing if you stop saving anything at age 29, it's just meant to show the value of starting early. Now, the rule of 72, y'all, is just a simple rule of thumb. It can be influenced by many other factors, investment markets, personal situations that may happen during your life. So for our purpose, it's just meant to help you understand the value of time when it comes to retirement planning. The cost of waiting to start saving can be significant because you lose those periods of time that your money can double. So why is it even important that your money grows over time? Why not just take no risk at all and keep everything in a savings account? Well, you probably have heard the term inflation, and it's an important factor in determining how much you're going to need to have saved for retirement. The cost of basic necessities as well as services you may need will continue to rise over time. Here's some examples. I like to read through a few of these. In 2022, I think the average cost of a gallon of milk in the United States is about $3.88. Assuming a 3% average rate of inflation going forward, in 2052, that gallon of milk could cost you $9.42. If your Netflix subscription costs $15.49 a month right now, 30 years from now, it could be $37.60. If you're buying a mid-priced car at $23,000 today, that same car 30 years from now could cost $56,000. Leaving your savings in an account that doesn't grow only ensures that you will lose purchasing power over time. Doing that would mean in order to reach your retirement goal, you would need to save an even greater percentage of your income, which may not be feasible for you. A disciplined investment strategy that's appropriate for you and your specific situation can compound your efforts and aid you in reaching the ideal life in retirement. Surprise, surprise, y'all. Step 3 is to save as much as you can, which is our other retirement savings mantra. So once you start saving in your 401k or IRA, don't put on the blinders. This is not a set it and forget it strategy. You have to look for opportunities to increase your rate of savings when possible. I recommend trying to do it every year, maybe make it a New Year's resolution. Even just a 1% more contribution can make a big difference over time. And what about increasing your savings rate when you get a merit increase or a bonus? Raise your savings rate before you raise your standard of living. I always say to use this review of your savings rate as a reason to look at your spending. Some of y'all were in the budgeting workshop last month. Cutting or reducing spending on things you don't really need could allow you to bump up the money you're putting into a 401k or IRA, allowing even more money to compound and grow for you over time. And while you're at it, some simple things you can do would be thinking about doing something like bringing dinner leftovers to lunch just one more day a week, or shop for a better cell phone plan or lower car insurance. Doing those things, having those habits, those behaviors can make a huge difference in the amount that you'll ultimately be able to save for retirement. So this, to your question earlier, many financial professionals recommend you strive to reach certain general retirement savings benchmarks at various stages of life. Sorry about that. Note that there's a gradual increase here. If you're able in your 20s to contribute 7 to 10% of your annual pay split between your 401k or IRAs, you're doing really well. I highly encourage you to try to do that. Definitely at least take advantage of the match. If your employer offers that matching contribution to a 401k, I would start there. And then anything in addition that you're able to save, try to put that into a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA based on your income situation. So this is the strategy. Do at least as much as your company will match, then contribute as much as you can to a traditional or Roth IRA. And then if you're able to max those out, start adding more to the 401k after that. So if you see in your 30s and 40s, you see a gradual increase. If you can get to your 50s or 60s of saving 20% or more, you're doing really well. Most people aren't able to do this, but one of the great things about starting early is if you build your lifestyle from the beginning around making these types of contributions, you're going to be in really good shape to hit the benchmark that you need to hit as far as reaching your retirement goal. So step 4 is do not forget about the cost of healthcare. This is hard to think about when we're younger because we may not have a lot of healthcare costs, hopefully for most of us. But future healthcare costs are actually one of the most overlooked factors that can affect life in retirement. I'll give you this example. A January 2022 report from the Employee Benefit Research Institute estimated that a 65-year-old couple retiring this year would need between $182,000 and $361,000 to cover their healthcare costs during retirement. So whether retirement is a long way off for you or it's starting to seem more and more imminent, it's a smart move to start planning for healthcare costs. Using an online healthcare cost calculator can be really helpful. I've provided a link to one from Fidelity here. I'm going to pull this up real quick and do a quick example for you, just so you can see how much me and my wife can expect to pay for healthcare in retirement. So me and my wife are ages, I am 33. Don't tell my wife I told you that she's 30, nearly 31 next month. She loves when I tell her that. Let's say she retires at Medicare age, which is 65, and I retire when she retires at the same time. Our life expectancy, from a life expectancy standpoint, I always say plan to live longer than shorter. So we'll leave it at 93. Look at this. My wife, Jenny, and I should anticipate needing about $513,746 just to pay for healthcare expenses in retirement. So as you can see, it's going to be one of the biggest expenses we have and something we need to start thinking about or have started thinking about already. So aside from contributing to your 401k or IRA, there are additional methods that can help you address future healthcare expenses. You may have the option to use a health savings account when you have employee benefits. And there's also the possibility of purchasing long-term care. I'm not going to get into the details of those, but certainly something to have on your mind as far as options for yourselves in the future. All right, we're at our 5th and final step for retirement saving success. That is seek professional help if you need it. A financial services professional can give you hands-on guidance and advice. And specifically, a true financial planner will follow a 7-step process to help you define your goals and make them smart. We talked about that in our budgeting workshop, making smart goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And a financial professional can help you address some of those assumptions like inflation or projected investment returns or what your healthcare expenses might be. And they can help you decide on the best course of action to take to reach your various goals, not just retirement, goals that may occur in your life way before retirement, because those are going to require some behaviors to get to there as well. And for anyone who doesn't feel capable of doing it themselves, a financial planner can help you design and manage an investment plan that's specific for you. And I think most importantly, and one of the things I always say is they can help you find a balance between enjoying life now and reaching your long-term goals. And a really good financial planner is going to join you on your journey and help you track your progress and navigate changes. You can see that process is circular because things change throughout life and you have to adapt and adjust for them. Okay, so as we wrap up today's discussion, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on the big question, which is how much will you actually need to save for retirement? So many financial professionals recommend saving enough to replace 75 to 80% of your pre-retirement income, whatever that might be. And that's something that you can certainly have an estimation of based on what career path you go down and what the expectations for wage increases over time might be. Whether or not that 75 to 80% benchmark is right for you will depend on your own circumstances, but it is a good starting point. Some of you are going to need less in retirement, others will need more, depending on your lifestyle. We'll take a closer look real quick at some factors that could determine how much of your income you'll need to replace. So depending on your lifestyle, it's possible that your expenses could be less in retirement than they are today. For instance, let's say you pay off your mortgage before retirement. That's a huge financial commitment from a cash flow standpoint to not have to deal with anymore in retirement. Or maybe you downsize to a smaller home, get lower costs, you move to a less expensive city. Maybe you still work a little bit, you earn a little income to offset your expenses. Maybe you have other sources of income. You've invested in rental properties over time. You have other investments that provide you income that you can use to meet those expenses. Or maybe your lifestyle is such that Social Security might be adequate or provide a higher percentage of replacement income than the 40% number that we talked about earlier. And for a lot of people, one of the biggest things that can help them in retirement is that to no longer be financially supporting children or other family members. But there's certainly dynamics that happen in people's life that don't always make that possible. And on the other hand, with retirement potentially lasting 30 years or more, you may have to be more aggressive with your savings goal because it could be more expensive. Maybe you are making mortgage payments still, or you want to travel extensively or buy a second home or vacation home, or you think your cost of healthcare could be higher based on some personal circumstances, or you anticipate that you'll need long-term care because you have a family history of folks who have needed long-term care at some point. Or what if you want to start your own business that maybe is a second career in retirement? That's going to take some capital up front to make that happen. Or again, like we said before, if you're still supporting someone like your children or maybe aging parents in retirement, that could be a reason to need to save more as well. Also, if you think that Social Security benefits aren't going to cut it or would be reduced, that's another reason to think about saving more. So one of the last slides here, I'm not going to let you leave today without actually showing you a retirement projection. So let's go to this calculator from NerdWallet. This is a really good one, by the way, just from an estimation standpoint to give you an idea. So let's say you guys are 22 years old, you're getting your first job out of college. I want to just assume, let's say they pay you a salary of $50,000 and up to this point, you haven't saved anything for retirement. Let's not worry about how much you're saving for the time being. Let's worry about when you want to retire. Say at age 60 sounds ideal to you, and we think you'll live to be 95, and maybe your investments will earn an average of 6% each year. Remember this retirement spending, we want that to be between 75 and 80%. So I'm going to bump that to 77 here. So your first job, let's say your 401k matches 6% of your pay. So if you're doing a 6% contribution, that would be $267 of monthly income contributed. As you can see here, that's not going to get you there. But remember, if they match, you're contributing 6% and they're contributing 6%. So that's actually more like a 12% contribution. There's the value in that match. That's 100% free money for you right there and gets you a little bit closer to your retirement goals. But as you can see here, we're still only about half of the way there. So what can you do? Well, you have certain options to decide from. You can choose to retire later, which gives you more time to contribute income. But how much later would you have to retire? Here I'm still going up, up, up. 9 more years of working get you to that retirement goal. So maybe that doesn't feel realistic for you. Maybe you want to split the difference and retire at Medicare age, which is 65. Still not quite there, but you're already, you don't really want to live a different lifestyle. So you don't want to decrease your spending. So, well, let's think about what your investments are. If you invest in a portfolio that has an expectation of just 1% more annually, it would mean more investment risk, but maybe that's something you're comfortable with. That gets you pretty close. So there's a good way to estimate sort of what the number will be based on an average 3% inflation rate, thinking you're getting salary increases of about 2% a year. You can see some of the factors that are built into this calculation, but there are different levers that you can pull to get yourself to that retirement goal. And again, that's something to revisit every year because your circumstances are going to change, your income is going to change, your goals are going to change. So doing this calculation now might look very different than it looks when you're 30. So y'all, as we end the presentation, I just ask you guys to start thinking about what your ideal life in retirement might look like. No matter how old you are right now, it's important to explore your expectations and concerns about retirement so it can help motivate you to start early and to save as much as you can. I thank you guys for taking the time to listen to this. We have talked about a lot. We've addressed why there's a need to save for retirement. You know that you should start early and save as much as you can. We've talked about the 5 steps to reaching an ideal retirement, and you have an idea of how to calculate what the amount you need might be. That's all I have for you. I hope this was helpful. I'm going to stick around to answer any questions that you guys have.
Awesome, Brad. That was super. I love these little calculators. I think that helps give everybody a wonderful tool to make all of this look a little bit more real.
For sure. Absolutely.
Questions for Brad?
I have a question.
Shoot.
So let's say my goal post-graduation was to contribute or to save 10% of my income.
Mhm.
Is that like me personally contributing 10%, or because I know you said the recommended is 7 to 10, or does that
Yeah.
include the employee match? So would like
That's a good question.
say
Yeah.
say I was investing like 5% into an IRA, would the other 5% be like 2.5% me, 2.5% employer, or do you recommend like your percentage goal to be all me?
I recommend to start early and to save as much as you can. And that's totally true. And here's the reason why. If you're let's say you get your first job and you really know what your salary is going to be, and you take a look at what it's going to cost you to live where you're ultimately going to end up living. If you start and you say, I'm going to start contributing 10% of my income, forget about the match because your employer might not provide one. But let's say you start with 10%. It's a lot easier to start out doing that and adjust your lifestyle based on that than it is to not do that, get to 25, 30 years old and realize I'm not saving a high enough percentage of my income, but I've gotten really used to living a certain way. And I'm going to have to make some changes to the way I live, which might not be a very comfortable thing to do. So if you can, in those first years of working in your 20s, contribute 7 to 10% of your income, forget about the possibility of a match from your employer, actually contribute 7 to 10% of your gross income to either your 401k. And again, at least contribute up to the amount of the match to the 401k if they give you one. Anything in addition to that, contribute to either a traditional or Roth IRA based on your future expectations from a tax bracket standpoint. And then if you start maxing out that IRA, then you can start adding more to the 401k on top of that, depending on how much income you have, the ability to contribute to those plans.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Just a quick question. What are some of those methods whenever you hit, if you get above the income to put into the Roth or put into a traditional IRA? What are some of those backdoor methods?
Yeah, so you use the term backdoor, so I assume you've probably done some research and heard of the backdoor Roth IRA contribution. That is an option to make a non-deductible contribution to a traditional IRA and then immediately convert that to a Roth IRA before it has a chance to earn anything. That's still an option for high income earners to make Roth IRA contributions. We do, however, think that Congress could eventually close that loophole. It was on the table this year from a legislative standpoint to get rid of the ability to do that, but they maintained it. So I can't say for sure that from now until when you retire, that that's always going to be an option. There are also, for high income earners, programs where you can contribute money you've already paid taxes on into various types of insurance policies that grow a cash value. That also, life insurance is supposed to provide death benefit if something happens to you, but policies that accumulate a cash value can actually be tapped into for income in retirement. And if it's after tax money that was contributed to it, that means it can grow tax deferred just like in an IRA and be distributed tax free to you in retirement. They call that a rich person's Roth IRA strategy for somebody that's a high income earner. And it's certainly worth talking to a financial professional about because it's a complex strategy to set up. But if any of you are ever blessed enough to face that situation in your careers, it's certainly worth having a conversation with somebody like me about how to do that the right way so that you have access to income and you're invested properly. You're not taking any more risk than you need to take, but based on when you want to retire and how much income you're going to need in retirement, let's try to do that in the most tax efficient way possible for you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Brad?
Yeah, I'll throw one out there if you don't mind. So just to make sure I'm understanding one point clearly, you talked about kind of contributing to the 401k, contributing to the IRA. When you max that out, moving back to the 401k. So just to make sure I'm understanding that clearly, so you can have an employer sponsored retirement plan that you're working on and then have an IRA on the side that you're also
Absolutely.
saving with. Okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And for all of you state employees on the phone who have the option to participate in what's probably it's a 403B for you guys, or either a 401A, and there's also the state optional retirement plan. You can
Right.
do both of those things and also contribute to an IRA. So those limits and thresholds are based on the individual type. So the employer sponsored retirement plan is its own bucket. The IRA is its own bucket, so you can do that. What you can't do is contribute double the amount of money to the Roth versus the traditional 401k. You can
Right.
only do a 20,500 combination for both. The same thing applies to traditional and Roth IRAs. You have that $6,000 maximum that you can contribute to those plans each year,
And Brad,
unless
I
you're over
believe
50.
we are required to participate in the state retirement plan,
Mhm.
not the
yeah.
401k. I mean, I do both, but I think we're required to participate in the state.
Yeah, and so that plan, you don't have a choice. It contributes, I think, 9.5% of your pay, and you get a certain, I think, up to 5% match on that. Whether you like, that's all you can do. You can make some choices about the investment allocation inside of that, but you don't have the ability to change your contribution amount. Whereas if you had the ability to add on that 403B option, I would say contribute to an IRA first. And if you are able to max that out, then maybe you add that 403B option later.
Very good. Other questions?
And certainly, again, you guys are going to have my contact information is on that last slide. If you guys have any other questions, did you think about this later? Shoot me an email or give me a call. I really want to be accessible to y'all to answer any questions that you have. And feel free to shoot me an email a few years from now when you've got an employee benefits package sitting in front of you. The University of South Carolina did a lot for me and made college an incredible possibility for me. So if I can do anything to help you guys too, that's just one way I can give back. So I'm happy to help.
Wonderful. Any other questions before we wind down this alumni roundtable, which again has been so helpful?
Before we wrap up, I will ask one quick question for you guys, because this is probably the last one of these we'll do this semester. Are there any financial topics top of mind that you would like to hear about maybe in one of these next fall? Anything you guys have thought about? And it's okay if there's no answer, but if you think of anything, let Jan know, because she's seen there's a whole wide world of things that we could talk about.
I'll add this. I mean, it's a topic that, of course, is hitting me quickly, but I'll add this tidbit of advice. As soon as you have children, open a 529 account. Don't hesitate. Don't wait. It doesn't take a lot of money to open one of those. And I had a misconception that it did, and we waited too long. And we've got some money in there for Kate, but if I had opened that when she was born, I would be feeling great about college next year.
And education costs inflate at a much higher rate than average. We estimate anywhere from a 6 to 7% increase in the cost of tuition over that period of time. So when I talk to my new parents about what it's going to cost to send their kids to college, they don't usually like that part of the conversation.
We got two questions, Jenna and then Robbie. Jenna?
So I had to miss out on the budgeting workshop. So a round 2 or a recording of that. I don't know if there's a recording available, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we did record.
Okay.
That, so yeah, Jan.
yeah, I would love to see that. And also just like I know there's a lot of strategies out there for paying off debt.
Mhm.
So maybe, various strategies that people use for that. Like I know the Dave Ramsey way is the debt snowball.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
like hearing about the different options and how you've seen those work for people.
Yes, we could certainly maybe do a debt reduction or debt management, one of these in the fall, and be happy to do that.
Yeah, I was going to suggest investing while in college, or investing before income, because that's what I'm I'm in that situation where it's like, I don't know, I'm going to a professional school afterwards and would just like to know like best strategies of how to invest before, getting income to put in a Roth IRA or traditional IRA. 'Cause
Sure.
the way I do it now, I get taxed pretty heavily and I'm not a huge fan of it. So
Sure. Yeah, no, we could certainly look at that. I do have a basics of investing presentation that would cover some of that. And certainly, we talked about the requirement of having earned income to be able to make any contributions to. And I mean, that could be working part-time at Subway or working in the Office of Fellowship and Scholarship as a student. Have anything you earn from a job qualifies as earned income. So you can start contributing to an IRA now if you have earned income, whether or not you're participating in a 401k plan. So if you have the discipline and the ability to do that, starting early, as you know, is very important. Cool, guys.
Just to let you all know, I have inserted the budgeting video into the calendar appointment for this roundtable tonight. If you open that, you should be able, hopefully, to see the recording attached to this appointment.